Okay, hi everyone. Last time I left off in the middle of meditation 2 with Descartes, and so I want to finish discussing both meditation 2 and I want to discuss meditation 3 in this video, maybe going into the next video. And I want to see and fill in some of that structure that I discussed last time. If you recall, I suggested the structure of these meditations, these first three meditations, was roughly this. That in the first meditation, Descartes takes up this skeptical method of inquiry in order to find something which is certain. By the end of the first meditation, it seems as though he's come across nothing which is certain, so we went through the reasons for that. The start of meditation 2, he does come across what he takes to be a foundation for knowledge, the famous cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. In the rest of meditation 2, he's going to characterize what he means by the self or the I. And so that's something I want to discuss. And then I mentioned as well that in meditation 3, Descartes wants to prove God's existence. And I said last time, well, it's not obvious, perhaps, how that fits in with the rest of these meditations so far. And so I want to discuss some of the motivations for his proof for God's existence before actually looking at the proof itself. Okay, so we'll do that in a moment. But for now, if we just look at meditation 2, we looked at Nietzsche's possible objections to I think therefore I am or the cogito. But suppose, just retaining Descartes' method, suppose that he's right about it. Suppose he's right about the foundation of the cogito. Well, even suggesting I think therefore I am, if you see me write these triangular dots, that just means therefore. It's just shorthand. Descartes says, well, I have to determine what this I really is. What do I mean when I say this word I? And around here, he starts to say something which might not be obvious. He starts to ask, well, what kinds of attributes or properties does this I seem to have? And he comes up with a couple that just seem strange. He asks, for example, is there anything particularly nutritive? And he even says, is there anything that involves walking that involves the I? And his answer immediately is no. Why is that? Because it seems as though the only thing that matters is that the I is thinking. There's nothing particularly nutritive about the I, because anything that's nutritive just experiences growth and decay, experiences change in some kind of fashion. But the things that experience growth and decay, I doubted with my senses in meditation 1. And so there doesn't seem to be anything nutritive. And now I'm going to say why that is more so in a moment. He also asks, well, is there anything about this I which involves sense perception? And again, the answer seems to be no, for the same reason that the senses have been doubted in meditation 1. It does seem as though what is necessary in characterizing what the I or the self is just that it's a rational, thinking thing. It is a conscious, cognitively active, thinking thing. And that's what he thinks is really essential to understanding what the I is. That seems to be its only kind of necessary component. An I that thinks, that wills, that doubts, performs other cognitive, conscious functions. And so in really labeling this, the question we might have, is why did he bother with these others? Why would he even state it? And the answer has to do, again, with the kind of authority that he is challenging in terms of the prevailing views of the time. And in particular, even though he doesn't name Aristotle in the text, it is the Aristotelian picture that he is trying to refute when characterizing the nature of the I. Because if we look at what Aristotle thinks the self or a human being is, it actually involves these three facets. And I want to say why that is real fast. So this is a very brief skeletal summary of why Aristotle believes a human being is composed of all three of these. So Aristotle, if we think of him as a kind of proto-scientist in a way, a philosopher of the first degree and a proto-scientist, one thing that he wants to do as a scientist is to try to give a taxonomy or a classification of the kinds of things in the world that exist. And in doing that, he makes what I think are pretty simple distinctions that, on the face of it, though they're a little bit superficial, I think a lot of us would agree with. So, for example, he says there are things which are alive and things which aren't alive. Rocks, for instance, the earth, doesn't seem to be alive. But of the things which are alive, well, it seems as though some of them have certain properties. For example, there are things which have nutrition or have nutritive aspects. And again, that just means for him that they undergo growth and decay and change in virtue of being alive in that way. And so, of course, the kind of thing he has in mind here are vegetative life and plants. Vegetative life experiences growth and decay. But then, if you look at other things in nature, while it's true that they are nutritive, they experience growth and decay, there are other facets or aspects of them. For example, they have senses, and they can perceive. And moreover, they are self-moving beings. Because it's true of at least some plants that they are moving, but they're not self-moving in the way that, for example, animals are. And moreover, animals can feel pleasure and pain, it seems, according to Aristotle. And so there are these other aspects. And everything that plants have, animals also have. They have nutrition. But animals are over and beyond just what plants happen to have. And in the same way, the animals extend past plants. It is human beings that extend past animals. In virtue of what? Well, in virtue of being rational. For Aristotle, what we are just rational animals. Because we have all the things that plants have in terms of nutrition, we have all the things that other animals have in terms of being self-moving and experiencing pleasure and pain and perceiving and having our senses. But more than just that, we are also rational. We're able to engage in both practical reasoning, kind of reasoning in which there are means and ends that are desired. And we're also able to engage in theoretical reasoning about, say, the nature of the universe, or the nature of the polis of the Greek city-state, or the nature of the good or of justice, of ethics, and so on. And so it seems as though we're the only thing that has this capacity if we're just looking around at things in the world. And so in order to understand what human beings are, in terms of their human nature, for Aristotle, we have to include all three of these. And so, while it seems strange at first that Descartes would even consider these aspects, it's in virtue of rejecting the nutritive aspect and the sense-perceiving aspect as being necessary to what a human being is, that allows him to say, no, the only thing that's necessary to understand what a human self or a human mind or a human soul even, is it is a rational thing. It's a thinking thing. And so this is why he makes this really important distinction and clarification when characterizing just what the I is that exists. Moreover, there's a particular kind of implication from this view. And so I want to say something about that. Again, we started off with an epistemological inquiry. What can I know for certain? And this has to deal with knowledge. But from here, when characterizing the I, there's a kind of metaphysical implication. And it's a very famous one, and it's attributable to Descartes. It's just called metaphysical, or Cartesian, just to give it an adjective, dualism. And dualism suggests that there are, in the universe, basically two kinds of things, or in particular, there are two kinds of substances. There are thinking things, or what Descartes calls res cogitans, having to do with conscious, cognitive thought and thought processes. And on the other hand, there's res extensa. That is, things which have a property of being extended. In other words, of being extended in space and time, in what we would otherwise call the physical world. And so in virtue of this epistemological inquiry, there's this metaphysical dualism that results between what is a common distinction in some ways, minds and bodies, where the only thing that is essential and necessary for a human being is its mind, which Descartes also references as the soul. And so you can imagine how this could be very important. And I want to suggest two different ways for understanding why that kind of idea is important, because I think it's a familiar idea. We say things like, well, mind over matter. And in suggesting something like mind over matter when talking about a particular topic, of overcoming what just happens to be a physical or material obstacle, we're suggesting kind of implicitly that there's a difference between minds and bodies, between things that think and things which are extended in space or have other kinds of physical properties. And so I want to get at that very quickly from both a kind of religious perspective and from a non-religious perspective. And after that, there will be a little bit more to talk about with Meditation 2. So in order to do that, I'm going to start a new video.